Hello and welcome to Gaming History 101. My name is Sasha and I'll be your host today. This episode is going to be something a little bit different. Now, in this entire season, I've only talked about stuff like relating to gaming. I've dabbled in politics and drama a little bit in the Coleco Chameleon video, but I've never actually gone full depth into like internet history territory. And like, I understand that my channel is called Gaming History 101, not Internet Historian, but then I found out about a little thing called Steins Gate. Now, if you don't know what Steins Gate is, it's probably the only anime worth watching, in my opinion. Although, what do I know about anime? I'm Russian. Steins Gate originally released on the Xbox 360 in October 2009, with various ports coming to different platforms, ranging from the years 2010 to 2013. The backstory behind Steins Gate is probably one that's more interesting than the actual story of Steins Gate itself, which isn't all that boring in and of itself. I just said that twice. I'm not stupid, I swear. This, technically, since it's a visual novel and it's on Steam, it kind of counts as a game. So, you know what? You can't say anything about it. This is my video, so sit back and enjoy. This is going to be the history of one of the greatest internet mysteries of all time, the story of John Titor. Let's go. John Titor, John Titor, just who is this guy and how the hell do you pronounce his name? Well, nobody knows exactly who John Titor is except maybe John Miller, but the first mentions of John Titor anywhere was on a broadcast of Coast to Coast AM, a radio show once hosted by a guy named Art Bell. Titor first popped up on July 29th, 1998 through two faxes sent to Bell during the show. The faxes tell of the discovery of time travel in 2034 and the devastation following the Y2K disaster. Saying that out loud makes me laugh. Art Bell read the second of the two faxes on air, but I couldn't find the audio because I couldn't be bothered to sit through the entire 3 hours of that podcast, or recording of the radio show, or whatever you want to call it, so here's the text of the second fax. Let me explain, Mr. Bell. I sent a fax with this opening on July 29th, 1998. As I said then, I am a time traveler. I have been on this world line since April of this year, and I plan to leave soon. Typically, time travelers do not purposely affect the world lines they visit. However, this mission is unusually long, and I've grown attached to some of the people I have met here. After this, Titor just kinda seemed to fall off the face of the earth until the early 2000s when somebody popped up on a couple BBS boards claiming to be John Titor, and they actually had stories very similar to his. So what do you think? Good faker or coincidence? Originally only identifying himself as Time Travel Zero, John Titor's identity was very well hidden. He never uploaded or faxed or sent anybody pictures of himself, or he never actually told us whether or not John Titor is a pseudonym. He took great care into making sure nobody actually found out who he was. The only thing we know about him is that he was a military time traveler from 2036. He was on a mission to retrieve an IBM 5100 computer from an IBM engineer in 1975. He said this specific computer was needed in order to debug special legacy software in the future. Why this specific model was required will be explained later in this video. And also, he was probably referencing the year 2038 bug that affects most, if not all, 32-bit operating systems of Windows, Linux, Mac, you name it. It's a certain glitch in Unix-based operating systems that messes with the clock, and it throws a bunch of things out of whack. So yeah, that's the thing. If we can draw parallels, it's essentially the same thing as the Y2K bug, which affected millions of computers at the turn of the millennium. John Titor was selected to go back and get the computer as his paternal grandfather apparently was directly involved with programming for and assembling the computer all the way back when it was first being made. The reason he stopped in 2000 is to gather certain personal belongings and talk to family, all of which either die out or don't exist anymore in his time. So, I mean, if you were Marty McFly, wouldn't you want to do that too? With this in mind, it's important to note he disappeared after 2001. The time traveler has gone about his route. Now, why specifically an IBM 5100 computer? Why not a 5150? LGR has a bunch of those, why don't you just go borrow one of his? Well, the reason he wanted a 5100 specifically is because the 5100 computer was able to read APL code as well as basic code. Now, APL code is the kind of code that ran on those giant IBM mainframes that your university still probably has in one of its storage rooms and never bothered getting rid of. The APL programming language is named after the book A Programming Language. As I just said, the 5100 had an internal emulator of sorts, or converter, I guess, and that's what would help you convert the basic code, which is probably what Titor needed to translate into APL, or vice versa. I don't know him personally. This was secretly included in the IBM's feature list, but it wasn't advertised, as IBM wanted to keep the personal computer market separate from the mainframe market, because if they advertise it as that, it would kill the mainframe market. Take a lesson from Osborne before Osborne was even a thing. Now back to John Titor himself. John Titor made several predictions about various events that would occur in the future, ranging from as early as the early 2000s to like way into the future, like a decade into the future, a decade and a half. Some of them were vague and others were super specific. These predictions attracted attention from the world over, inspiring fiction, music, art, and investigations by pseudo-journalistic entities. Think poll before poll. His description of what the US would look like post-nuclear war was pretty generic, but one of the more interesting things about his predictions was that he predicted specifically the devastation of various places around the world, and strangely the breaking apart of the United States into 5 separate factions, which hasn't happened yet, so I'm still waiting on the split, Titor. The hell is it? This war would be a long time coming. He predicted a civil war that would begin with civil unrest surrounding the 2004 United States presidential election, where George Bush defeated John Kerry with 35 electoral votes. This civil conflict he characterized would, in his own words, be like, quote, having a Waco-type event every month that steadily gets worse. Here he was referencing the 1993 Waco siege, which was a 51-day standoff between the ATF, FBI, and a cult of religious extremists called the Branch Davidians. This siege left at least a collective 83 people dead. Titor stated that it would essentially be at everyone's doorstep and would erupt into a full-fledged war by 2008. According to Titor, as a result of this, the USA would split into 5 factions based on various factors and different military objectives. The Civil War would end in 2015, but it would also kickstart a brief but super intense World War III, though he was vague on the reasoning and events kicking up to the war. At some point, there would be an exchange of nukes that Titor would refer to as N-Day. Washington, D.C. and Jacksonville, Florida were specifically mentioned as targets of nuclear strikes. After the war, Omaha, Nebraska would be named the new US capital. Titor talked about quantum mechanics and the various myths and paradoxes surrounding the subject of time travel. Titor specifically mentioned that the Everett-Wheeler model of mechanics, otherwise known as the many worlds theory, was indeed the correct model of quantum mechanics, and that the grandfather paradox was not the correct form of understanding time travel. Titor stated that if you did go back in time and kill your grandfather, you're technically not killing your grandfather, but another person's grandfather. I hope that makes sense, because I'm not sure how else to explain it. Although Titor invoked the many worlds theory of time travel, where events from his future's history may differ from what happens in our history, Titor expressed assurance that the differences were minimal at best between both. As a result of this, his descriptions of the events in his world would have been interpreted as predictions of a coming horror and would be compared with historical events that have happened since 2001. John Titor described his time machine in various details in different forum posts. In one of his earliest posts, he called it a stationary mass temporal displacement unit powered by 2 topspin dual positive singularities, which produced a standard offset Tipler sinusoid. I too speak cursive. What any of that means is beyond me, as I'm not a theoretical physicist, or a physicist for that matter. I'm only 17. I'm just a stupid kid. I'll just put pictures of the Tipler sinusoid, whatever, right here, or right here, I don't know yet. I'll put it somewhere. An earlier post was even more descriptive, saying that it contained the following. It contained 2 magnetic housing units for the dual micro-singularities, because one magnetic one would just make it one big singularity and it wouldn't be good. An electron injection manifold to alter mass and gravity of the micro-singularities, a cooling and X-ray venting system, gravity sensors or a variable gravity lock, 4 main cesium clocks, which are basically just super expensive digital clocks that, I think they're called atomic clocks, and they run off cesium, I would assume. It also contained 3 main computers. I would assume it's something much more powerful than, you know, an iPhone. Probably like one of those Zotac mini form factor gaming PCs. Do you know what I'm talking about? I think you know what I'm talking about. I'll put a picture of it. Oh, what if it's a Mac Mini? Ooh. All of this was said to be shoved into the back of a 1967 Chevy convertible, but later it was said to be shoved into a back of a 1987 truck with 4-wheel drive, though he never exactly specified what kind of truck it was. In his book, which, if we're being honest, is really just a collection of forum posts, The Time Travel Tale of John Titor, which is alliteration at its best, Titor describes flying through time. Here's what he said. The unit has a ramp-up time after the destination coordinates are fed into the computers. An audible alarm and a small light start a short countdown, at which point you should be secured in a seat. The gravity field generated by the unit overtakes you very quickly. You feel a tug towards the unit similar to rising quickly in an elevator, and it continues to rise based on the power setting that the unit is working under. At 100% power, the constant pull of gravity can be as high as 2 Gs or more depending on how close you are to the unit. There are no serious side effects, but I try to avoid eating during a flight. No bright flash of light is seen. Outside, the vehicle appears to accelerate as the light is bent around it. We have to wear sunglasses or close our eyes as this happens due to a short burst of ultraviolet radiation. Personally, I think it looks like you're driving under a rainbow. After that, it appears to fade to black and remains totally black until the unit is turned off. We are advised to keep the windows closed as a great deal of heat builds up out of the car. The gravity field also traps a small air pocket around the car that acts as your only oxygen supply unless you bring compressed air with you. This pocket will only last for a short period and a carbon sensor tells you when it's too dangerous. The C204 unit is accurate from 50 to 60 years a jump and travels at about 10 years an hour at 100% power. You do hear a slight hum as the unit operates and when the power changes or the unit turns off. There is a great deal of electrical crackling noise from the static electricity. Off topic, but why the hell is this book over $250 on Amazon and eBay? This is a book, not a gold copy of Nintendo World Championships. Titor said that one of his main missions is to warn others of the spread of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, also known as mad cow disease, which was prevalent in his future. Mad cow disease is often contracted by eating tainted meat or animal products. Insert your standard vegan slogan here. As a result of this, in Titor's future, they only ate meat and animal products that they raised and cultivated themselves. Mad cow disease is a serious disease if you're ever diagnosed with it, and it's been in the news even as recent as January 2017. Despite this, under 1,000 people have contracted the disease in recent times since then, and most of them have even been in the United Kingdom, so in the traditional sense, while not completely ruled out, the possibility of an epidemic is practically non-existent, though it is still there, understandably. Now, all this is cool and, you know, actually really interesting, but what about the other side of the argument? What about the skeptics? Upon closer inspection of what Titor said about nuclear war, it's pretty obvious there hasn't been one yet. I mean, look outside your window. What year is it? 2017? 2018? The current year? I don't remember seeing nukes outside my window. I don't remember seeing EAS experience videos playing on my TV telling me to get the hell into my basement. I mean, North Korea, maybe, but like, look at this man tell me you'd f*** with him. I wouldn't step on this guy's I wouldn't look at this guy. Tell me, Rocket Boy has a chance against this thing? Get out of my face. Another one is the Civil War. Now, I don't really remember seeing a Civil War. The Battle of Berkeley is something that immediately comes to mind, but that's not really a civil war in the traditional sense of Civil War. Even in his original postings, there were quite a few inconsistencies story-wise. Now, this could all be because he was trying to throw people off to try not to figure out who he actually was, but still, the inconsistencies just have to be mentioned because they're just kind of, you know, they're glaring. In one of his posts, Titor mentioned that he, as a 13-year-old in 2011, joined the Fighting Diamondbacks, which was a shotgun infantry unit in his Florida army. His time there supposedly lasted about 3 years, but other posts mentioned him running away from war, so what did he do? As the John Titor story gained more traction and more attention, more people started testing the veracity and plausibility of his claims, his future, and his mission. However, in the real world, no Titor family, or let alone John Titor, is known to exist. So, could it be possible that America is harboring illegal aliens from another time period? Although it is entirely possible that he is just using a pseudonym, which is probably the more plausible thing. Yeah. As I said earlier, Titor said that the many worlds theory, the multiple worlds theory of understanding time travel, is the one that is correct, and the grandfather paradox isn't. Titor said that the purpose of his mission, which included traveling back in time and preventing World War III and the United States' Second Civil War, was his goal. In his earliest pre-online presence, such as the coast-to-coast faxes, he stated that he failed to prevent the future that he was trying to prevent, so it could be possible that he's just constantly going back and forth, and it's kind of like a Groundhog Day loop. That aside, in the current world, there is no nuclear war going on. There is no open fighting in the streets, constantly civil war breaking out. So either he was successful finally, and the loop was broken, or he was a fake. Another eyebrow raiser is that of the knowledge of the abilities that Titor mentioned in his original postings about the IBM 5100 computer. At the time, the early 2000s, public knowledge about the 5100's internal code translation capabilities was not widely available. However, in the computer industry, it was widely commented on, which suggested that the person behind John Titor had serious understanding of the machine in general. Bringing an end to the story here, and this won't take much longer, I promise, so just stick with me. An Italian television program, Voyager, I confini della conoscenza, I don't speak Italian, aired the results of an investigation on John Titor on May 19, 2008. Private investigator Mike Lynch found no registry evidence, past or present, of any individual named John Titor. He did, however, identify the John Titor Foundation, a for-profit company formed on September 16, 2003, with no office or address other than a rented postbox in Kissimmee, Florida. An IP address connected with Titor also geolocated at Kissimmee. John Houston of the website Hoax Hunter took a look of all the evidence and compiled some evidence of his own. He came up with a list of 88 people of who John Titor could have possibly been, of which he narrowed out 2 brothers based in Florida, Larry Aber, an entertainment lawyer based in the state, and John Rick Aber, a computer scientist. Larry is the CEO of the John Titor Foundation, and that Italian program concluded that John Rick is probably the person that did it, as at the time, he had the computer knowledge and it wasn't probable that the lawyer knew. Larry, on the other hand, claims to be the lawyer for John Titor's mother, whoever she is. Sure. So, all of this is really cool and all, but what is this—
Stop and talk about the game already!
Steins Gate's plot revolves entirely around time travel and how the main character and his gang of pals have to find an IBM 5100 computer to stop an evil organization called CERN. Along the way, John Titor is name dropped a fair amount of times, literally as early as about 4 minutes into the first episode of the anime, and yeah, I'm using the anime because I've watched the entire thing and it's easier for me to follow along. So if you've played the visual novel, feel free to comment pointers in the comments. Titor is a fairly heavy side character that acts as an intermediary between central plot points. This is all before we realize who Titor actually is, but I don't want to spoil way too much. If you want a parallel, think of it in the way that Assassin's Creed Unity worked in the first few chapters of Arno becoming an assassin. After each assassination, he goes back to the Council of Assassins, performs a debrief, and then is ordered to proceed with the next step of taking out the Templar threat. It's very similar in that regard. In addition, this novel brings a parody of 2chan and 4chan to the table called 8chan, and it's on 8chan that we get our first direct conversations with John Titor in the story, an occurrence that will repeat multiple times. So is that the end of John Titor's relevance in today's internet era? Well, besides the few "Who was the internet's first time traveler" articles that pop up every now and then, like maybe once a year or so, his name appears in the Donald Trump is a time traveler theory, and it's actually a really interesting read. It talks about how Donald Trump is actually time traveling from the future, and Mike Pence is also a time traveler, and all that, and if you can put aside political differences for like 5 seconds and actually sit down and like enjoy the work of fiction that it is, or non-fiction, I don't know. It's a really interesting read, and I'll leave a link to the Reddit post that somebody translated from the 4chan green text. So yeah. So overall, what do we as a society think about John Titor? Now, it's pretty obvious that little, if any, of his predictions ever really came to light. Could this be the postings of somebody that was actually a time traveler? Well, maybe, nothing's ever really ruled out, but it could also be the posting of somebody who was super concerned about the future of the world, and yeah, I'm gonna stop before I get way too deep. Leave a comment if you think John Titor was a actual thing, an actual person from the future, or if you think it was just a troll. I don't want a firestorm of political debate. For that, you can go to my failed political channel, which I'm not going to talk about, but if you want to go dig back into older videos and try to find it, then yeah, go argue there, not here. This is about gaming, not politics. With a terrible track record of the accuracy of these predictions, I don't think we'll have a nuclear war or anything like that anytime soon. But could that change any moment? Not likely, but possibly. Hoping Trump doesn't let that happen. All of that aside, the story of John Titor is interesting food for thought as to the plausibility and the possibility of time travel, and I don't want to go on for rambling way too much longer, so with that I'll just leave you with this Stephen Hawking quote. If time travel is indeed possible, we're the tourists from the future. If you like this video, be sure to click up here in the cards to see the last 2 videos uploaded on this channel, as well as my social media handles, which will be somewhere here. If you like this video, be sure to leave a like, and if you didn't, that other button seems to work pretty okay too. Don't forget to subscribe and click that bell notification, and don't forget to tweet at me, comment on my Instagram, and comment down in the comment section what you want me to make a video on, as if I like the idea, I'll do it, and if I don't, well, if the internet wills it, it must be done. Also, don't forget to share this video with your friends, your family, and anybody who you think is a fanatic about time travel, because they'll like it. Hopefully, I'll get more fans, you'll get more content, and it's a win-win situation for everybody. But, if this is where we part for today, this has been Gaming History 101. Thank you so much for watching. Peace. Also, holy crap, that was... This was sad.